Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. It's going to be a wild ride.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Counterpoints. Whatever number it says in the description, figure it out for yourself. If you haven't gotten to the point in life where you can find that information for yourself, don't know. Probably just go watch a video from Esports Talk or something. They could maybe read out what episode number it is. You know, that's got
at that point as well.
Yeah, you have to understand that is how it goes. So obviously, me and Moses back again. Actually, you know what, Moses? I even said this on By the Numbers because I've noticed nobody brings this up. You know that obviously up until, I'm going to say like end of December, basically when Team would start getting the good results under you coaching them, up until then, people used to 24/7 spam me and Richard like they did with Henry G and Cloud9 and Yanko and FaZe Clan, and just all the time say like, right, you're criticising Moses, right, you say Moses is a bad coach, right? And then what I noticed was is when you actually did turn the team around with new players in the team, even took some experimental transfers, got them back into contention, gave them one of the best teams, magically, no one just mentions you as a coach anymore, mate. You no longer exist, so fucking damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, what's going on? You don't get any credit. What?
That's the way I want it. I don't need any of the credit. Just leave me out of the conversation entirely. I just coach the guys. I don't want to be part of this social media circus anymore. I did that for 5 years. I'm done with it.
Fair enough. Okay, so our guests for this episode are in the bottom right-hand corner. We've got Hawka here, who you might have seen doing DreamHack NA, so obviously you didn't see him doing that, unless you like the person that's watching this who doesn't match fix in America. So I don't fucking know why you're even watching. Maybe you saw him do Flashpoint 2. Admittedly, you probably didn't see that either. You were probably watching, IM Beijing High Down or something. There's a lot of good tournaments out there. There's Blast, there's plenty of shit going on there. But if you did, you would have seen him. And in fact, amazingly, thanks to what an actual clusterfuck that event was and how badly, I wouldn't say organised it was more like reacting to things in the moment. He was even doing mad shit. Like, I brought him in initially to do, like, stats and analysis, and then he was just a caster with, like, Bardolph, almost as some sort of fucked up new duo or something. Like, didn't you even do, I think you even did the final, didn't you?
Yeah, which was weird. But we were all in our hotel rooms.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, you have to understand, like, Hawka, in some ways, what you should do, they won't know this reference, but I'll give it to you. You should essentially take the lesson of this and construct a Jonathan Creek-style adventure, where he's someone where, if you don't know, but guys, it's sort of like Columbo, like there's like, a mystery murder, and you don't know how it was done, except in Columbo you see it, You don't know how it's done either, and then this guy who's like sort of a Sherlock Holmes rip-off, he just sort of solves the mystery and finds out, how it was all done. Well, basically, what Hawka's figured out is not only how to get a better role at the event, but then how to get the final. You just have to basically do some mad scheme behind the scenes to get everyone locked in their rooms, unable to leave, and basically redacted. I can't say the reason why, but another caster to not want to cast the final. So,
it works out in the end.
Whatever, you got it in the end. That's all.
That's pretty much my whole career so far. So I'll take it.
Of the four of us, I know I just quit that job, but I've got this thing on YouTube, I've got money. Actually, the only one of us that's unemployed is our last guest. And so, but it's all right. Listen, he used to play CS and everything back in the day. I'm sure he's still got some good insight. So it's obviously MSL here, formerly of, let's go through it all, right? He's got back in the day Western Wolves, bunch of shit teams after that everyone in the Danish scene who isn't in TSM and Astralis pretends don't exist. Like, I know all you out there are like, it's weird how Glaive didn't play CS for a few years. Oh, he did. You just don't know that he was just going out in majors like last place every time with a bunch of mega players. But anyway, you had the Western Wolves, obviously Dignitas, turned into North. Some would say that's where it all went downhill, but there were still those weird moments where we entered the Twilight Zone. And of course, MSL was out AWPing Device in his prime at the peak of Astralis, beating them twice, winning the MVP on Overpass, 16-2 in the final. I don't fucking know. Mate, there's one question I've got for you, MSL. Even you must sometimes almost like, in English culture, we say like if you think you're dreaming, you want to like pinch your arm to see if it's real. Like, is this a dream or not? Even you must think back on that memory and just be like, was that even me? Was that another life? What was that fucking tournament? DreamHack Stockholm, mate, because that was like an alternate reality. You actually were the MVP for real.
Yeah, it was legit too. Crazy. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Like, I was MVP for 14 days, I think, and I just never expected that. And it was the most roller coaster experience I ever tried. Like, MVP at Stockholm, going out at major qualifier, getting kicked. Like, it was. I
think you're doing it in the wrong order then. It's supposed to go the other way around. Like, that is unbelievable. The problem with that, right, is I think roughly it was like somewhat like a month or something, that span. Dude, that should just be a documentary. It should just start on like, day one. It's like, I'm winning the event. I've just beaten the best thing. Then on day 30, it's like, I am now unemployed. Like, what? What happened in the last 30 days?
Crazy.
And it's like, you're probably wondering how I got here. And then the documentary starts, of course. We go back in time. Right, anyway. Yep. By the way, MSL, I know people, since we're just touching on some trivia before we really get into the important topics, I've got one thing I want to ask you, just to see what your answer is to it. Because you know when people, in English the word is retcon, it's where when something happens now, you change all of the past to just fit what happened now. So an obvious example would be like, let's say Kenny S now isn't very good. What you do if you're a hater is you go, well, he was never any good, he was just over, you do that, like you change all the history. One of the things people always do to you is they have that famous meme where they go, if anyone ever gets good in MSL's team, he just kicks them. What would you say to that meme? I don't think I've ever seen you like fully address it in public. So what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously the two players they're thinking of is basically Magisk and Config, right? As far as I remember MSL, they didn't just get kicked like when they were the MVPs. There was a bit of time between then. So what would you say to this like weird meme that people have? Because the reason I thought it up is obviously the joke people made after DreamHack Stockholm is you got too good because you won the MVP, so you had to kick yourself. That was the bit. At least that one was funny. I'll give them credit. That one was actually good. What do you think of this like weird reputation you carried in that sense, though?
I think a lot of people have opinions and they don't know what has happened in the team or what is going on within the team, which makes sense. Like how should they know? But yeah, a lot of things happens within a team, and I don't want to touch too much in deep about like I think Config even said in your interview some of the stuff to you.
Basically, it wasn't about his play, right? It was actually like
of course
mostly it was attitude problems with these players, right? It wasn't that they were just bad players.
Like both Magisk and Config is obviously insane players and probably some of the best I played with, also the ones I had most success with. So it's not so much about in-game stuff at all, actually. It's mostly about out-game stuff. And yeah, some things, maybe when you look back, you would have made something different. But in the end,
Can't
you
know that
made
in the moment, can you?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I would say going back, I don't think it would make any difference being the wiser I am now. I still think it would happen because some things you can't like... I think Config was in such a bad place that you couldn't help him, and in an organization like North, it was very professional with like staff behind and how you should go to the office and play. You should do all these kind of things, go to sports psychologist and so on. So I think it kind of broke him in some way, also with some personal stuff, and in the end, it was just unfixable, I would say. Like to have a team working with him, because some things like trust and so on, you can lose within that time. And yeah, in terms of Magisk, I think it was mostly out game. I don't want to touch too much on that, but yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, I think you've got the gist of it anyway. By the way, I'd also say as well, if people don't realise in that scenario, I don't know if Magisk has ever addressed it, but like Config, as you say in that interview, he basically understands that it had to happen in his career. Like I'm pretty sure things like that is actually how he got to wherever he is now, where he seems to be in a way better place. That's one of those things fans always ignore as well, because they're just looking at the play and the server. They love to classically be like, but this guy's really good. It's like, yeah, but what if he ruins the whole team environment? What if he was his own worst enemy? There's good reasons to kick people that don't have to do with shooting people with the crosshair. But we could tie that in actually to a topic that's very relevant right now, which is when you were saying there about the North organisation, right? One of the things, I know from the outside, North also has a terrible reputation as an org now, and people see it as like a loser org, and it wasted all the money, and, they fucked up all the FC Copenhagen sponsorship. But one thing I actually think people don't understand is, from my perspective, this is why I wanted to get your thoughts on this and tie it into some of the free agent market now, general managers, because it's kind of like a big topic at the moment. One thing I actually think when I look at North, that was the flaw, was they tried to do what a lot of orgs now are doing, actually, which is bring in ex-players, make them sort of, the term back then usually wasn't general manager, it was like director of esports or whatever, you have some term like that, or director of Counter-Strike. You bring in some ex-pro, so in the case of North, like, the people they brought in, if you don't know, if you're a fan, are literally the most legendary names in the history of Danish Counter-Strike. They brought in, arguably, like, on paper, the two smartest people to ever play Danish Counter-Strike at that point in time. They brought in Wimp, who was a legend from 1.6, and Ave, who was considered by some the greatest in-game leader to ever play CS. So you'd think, right, if I'm bringing these people in to, man up the project and help to frame how it's going to be done professionally and bring players in, you would think these guys must know the game. But I know from talking to those guys myself and having contacts in North, they kind of told me part of the problem was like a lot of their like knowledge of CS didn't really like translate, and some of them hadn't been following CS:GO, and like some of them even just told me straight up like those were kind of the first years they'd even tried doing that role, so they didn't know what they were doing themselves. Like, something didn't work. What would you say, MSL? What were the problems in North in that sense? Because obviously one of the things people look at, which I do agree with, is it didn't do there wasn't really like big name signings for those last few years. It was a lot of like gambles or like underwhelming ones or nobodies. Like, you didn't really get the big names like that were in the Mad Lions teams and the Heroics of the world. Like, some of these people went by you and to other teams. So what would you say was the downfall of North in that sense? And what do you think on this angle of the executives and the staff, etc.?
Yeah, I have to watch out what I say, because I obviously have my opinion and maybe Wimp have a different view.
Of course, yeah.
But my opinion was that we focused too much on outgame stuff as like fitness. I remember with Wimp, we had to go up at 8 o'clock to do fitness, and then we did like, what is this workout called? The CrossFit, where you just destroy yourself.
You just wreck yourself physically. It's mega cardio,
like,
basically.
I remember going up to practice and I couldn't feel my arms, and I just think that stuff like this and sports psychologists, like where you get forced, if you get forced to do as a sports psychologist, I feel like it's not a good thing. I will say in the end here, we had a great sports psychologist where it was mostly about like making the team together and so on. And I think he is like he's in the football team now as well, and works with really good football players. He's really good. So I think in the end, some things were right, but when it was with Wimp and Ave, it was just all over the place. And I think it's one of the reasons why, for example, Config went away from it, because there was so much like looking back, we didn't really play so much CS because we had to do so much other stuff. And I think in the end, playing a lot of CS will make a huge difference. And I would say that is a big thing. And I mean, in the end, actually, we had like half a year where it went really bad, where we had merge and so on. But then we got Mixwell for one event and won that. Then without practice, then we got Niko in and won DreamHack Stockholm and lost the major. And basically, like, we went to the major 3 days after. We had no practice. We had like the same tactics. We couldn't create something new, so we were so easy to read, and they read us, and that's just it. And then I got kicked. I got told it was because of a tweet that I made about the major, but I think it was also me and Wimp not being on the same page, because I pushed for more like that we should play more, we should focus more on CS, where he wanted to focus, on CS as well, but also a lot of outgame, and we just didn't fit together. And I would say that in the end, it would be either me or Wimp that should go, and they kicked me. And I would say that's the most annoying part in my career, because I felt like we had the team that I wanted, and I think we could have been something great with that team.
I can understand a lot of those concepts from Wimp, just because I feel like, I mean, when I stepped in as a coach too, like even being out of date with like current practice trends and even some of my Counter-Strike knowledge, a little bit out of date stepping in. But I think because I know Wimp was around when I was playing 1.6 as well. We have like a lot of ideas, and like that like work in theory. They're like ideas that sound really good. Like, we're going to get everyone up and we're going to get everyone working out because it is healthy and it can help you. Maybe not doing like fucking crazy ass CrossFit, but maybe, I don't like whatever it might be, something a little bit more chill.
Just
maybe
basic regime. Yeah.
Maybe you'll just run like a mile or something like that. And I know like when I came in like to Liquid, I wanted to do like a lot more like dry running and a lot more like boring stuff in the server and everything. But they're like, it's not that they're not effective, but it's like, speaking from Wimp, I know like I would look at how Liquid had been practicing when I joined and trying to get them to do, I'm like, oh, like we got good back in the day by doing this, this, and this. And then you realize there's just so many tools out right now that make a lot of those ideas like obsolete. Like dry running makes fucking sense when you can't go to YouTube and watch like a demo and immediately pick up all the smokes and flashes, or when like there's these complex lineups and stuff nowadays that we didn't have back then at 1.6. So I mean, that's not to defend him. I just understand. I know a lot of the ideas that I brought in early on like you could just tell within like a week or two, just like
it's like you don't know why it doesn't work. Yeah, it seems
good in
like it
theory,
should.
and then you're like, but you know, one, maybe the players don't buy in, and even if it's the best idea ever, it's not going to work if the players aren't bought in. And then two, maybe it sounds like a really cool idea, but once you put it into practice, you realize this isn't nearly as effective as I'd like it to be. And I mean, that's just an obstacle that I know I've ran into as well early on as a coach.
Yeah, I feel like those are the sorts of things that might give you like a really slight edge. So if we had a tournament circuit where you were building up to a really big tournament, like maybe you could do that. Maybe if you were building up to a major, you could do that. But it just feels like you have just tournaments all the time, right? So you just can't really do a lot of these things that might give you the very slight edge that you might see in normal sports. That's the way I see it anyway.
I would like to comment on that because I agree, like fitness and so on is great. And I also, like, after being in North for so long, I have built like, fitness and doing training routines and eating more healthy and so on. So I will say that North have done a lot of great things for me as a person to get in my life. But the way I see it and saw it is that fitness and sports psychologist and so on is the last percentage to get you good. But the problem is, if you're so far away from the top, it's not about the last percentage. It's about like the big 80%. Percentage, in game. And this was my kind of view. And you have to like be really, really good for a period, and then I think you can. The more you get things in game fixed, the more you can focus a bit more out game and so on.
Yes, I definitely agree, especially because like it's actually one of the areas where, in my opinion, in the scene, Astralis has actually like skewed everyone's perspective and made them over-focus on those elements. I know why they do it, because it's part of their PR to kind of make it look like, wow, we're like the most innovative org, therefore buy the stock and stuff, you know, we're a big company. I get why they do it, it's good PR, but the problem is, that also is, they did that with the, like, people forget this. Yeah, this lineup was like the greatest ever. The one they had before that won that first major was still pretty fucking good. It was like a top 3 team in the world for almost a year. So I don't think people realise you can add some of those little details in when you've already got everything else squared away. Like we're saying here, like the practice is great, all the players are on board, everyone's winning. In fact, if you're like the third best team, you might be even more motivated to do it. Maybe that's the last little thing that'll take you to number 1. But I tell you what, if you're one of those orgs who tries to do things like that, like make people work out, make them eat a healthy diet when they don't want to do it, if you're like the 13th best team in the world, you're going to have problems just because of that, mate. Like, I don't think people think about that. Like, yeah, in theory, I'd like it if everyone had, you know, really healthy diet. But I tell you what, maybe we have different ideas of what healthy is. If you come and tell me that I have to eat what you're telling me I have to eat, maybe that would be a nightmare for me. Maybe I'd rebel against that, even if it was, in theory, the right move, you know. I could see how plenty of players would be pissed off for that.
I'm just cracking up thinking about MSL and the whole team rolling in so fucking sore.
That sounds hilarious, doesn't it? Yeah.
Their arms are just too sore to even move the fucking mouse. That cracks me up.
It was rough.
Well, it's funny because my brother is an old school Counter-Strike player as well, and he's also like a bit of a fitness nut also. And like whenever one of my players has like a bad game, he messaged me. He's like, "Hey, yo, go get this guy and like take him outside and you know get some yoga mats and do like push-ups and sit-ups with him and have him go through a whole routine, listen to music, get him back in the right mindset." And it's like, yeah, that'd be cool. I get it, but you know, if he's not so much like, I don't think this guy's worked out ever in his life. I don't think it's going to work the way you want it to.
Indeed.
People have to buy into it for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the older you get, the more you understand, like, and learn and adapt.
One thing I want to transition into, though, because as I brought up there, these were people who essentially were like, I mean, at one point in time, Eve was the coach, Wimp was like essentially the general manager. Like when I tell those stories that I've said on some past episodes, like I heard, for example, during the time when you weren't in the team, that they actually, as an org, they actually legitimately passed on Carrigan. Like they could have had him as a player when he was going to leave FaZe, and they basically were like, for whatever reason, were like, no thanks, which to me is like, okay, I mean, I don't really know what you're looking for in IGL if you say no to Carrigan if you're not for that position. So it brings up a topic that people might have noticed I've been talking about a lot this last year, because as people now know, when I was at Flashpoint, one of the things I was doing a lot of my time was trying to connect free agents with teams and tell teams who they should sign and tell which players to get rid of. And my main battle in this sense wasn't with the teams and spending money, by the way. I know that seems like it is. The number one battle was the people whose job is called general manager in CSGO. Like, I've told some of these stories before, so I won't go too in deep depth, but like I said before, there were big orgs with tens of millions of dollars to spend on different games who would have their general manager was a guy who used to be their Overwatch coach, and then there'd be another org where their general manager was a CS pro who just quit recently and hasn't even done anything yet. Like, they would just have sometimes people you've never heard of but who were in the CS space. So the problem was some of these people, no matter how much they tried, they just weren't competent at their job. Like, they didn't know who was a free agent. Even if, say, MSL now is a free agent, they don't even know if he is one, or if he is, how do I contact him, or does he want to join a team like mine? Does he want to live in America? They don't know any of these things. And at the time, they didn't really, I get a sense a lot of them didn't really know what their job is. They thought it was like 3 or 4 years ago, where general manager is more the manager part of that. Like, I'm just the manager of the org, and I make sure the people below me in the hierarchy. Like, they didn't think of it like sports, basically. And in the modern day, as you see now, CS itself, the amount of money that we're talking about for buyouts, you have to basically be like a sports GM. It's like you're putting together a football team. Depending on what money you've got, you've got to spend your money properly, and you've got to figure out, can I get this person? Is it worth paying for this one? Is that overpaying? So I know right now, like, I've at least found MSL, you can see I'm a bit jaded. Like, when I've looked around the scene and I've talked to a lot of these teams, I actually, no joke, think most of those people have no clue what they're doing. I think most of it, it's not just that they're not good at the job. I think in general, like, the quality of the job, the standard doesn't seem to be very high. Like, as someone who's in free agency at the moment, what has the experience been like on your end? Like, to me, in the current climate, especially because you are a true free agent, like, you are just available to sign. You don't have to have like a massive buyout, a big go. In theory, as long as the salary makes sense and you want to join the team, you could join tomorrow. To me, I'm amazed that you still don't have a teammate. I thought with all these teams out there that need an IGL, there's even a bunch of like European teams that are very skilled but lack the IGL mouse spots. I can't believe all these orgs have got you. So give us a little brief update. Like, where's MSL at the moment, and what do you think in general? Because you must have been dealing with some of these people or trying to explore the different teams and reach out to people, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had some offers in the beginning, which was good money-wise, but I didn't feel like the lineup was strong enough. And at that point, it was like right after I got benched. Yeah, so I thought like I would wait and see and hope that I would get something better. It didn't happen, and I'm here right now, and I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. I don't want to just take a team to get salary or whatever. Like, I'm set for a good amount of years, and it's not what drives me. Like, I just want to win titles, and I believe I still have what it takes to win titles. I just need the right players around me.
See, this is how ridiculous MSL is as a human being, right? Even as a human, he is just who he is as an in-game leader. So if anyone remembers, I remember this vividly, but that's because I'm an alien unlike you. So when MSL made the final of ESL Pro League Season 5, when he played against G2, the French super team there, and lost, there's a game he played on Overpass, right, which he won 16-14. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because I think he had a lead of something like, I'm going to say like 13-6 or like 14-6. Now, you might ask, why did he only win 16-14? Because MSL is so ridiculous. Like he says there, where he's set for like fucking life or something from his salary in CS. He literally was like economically managing it like a fucking German. He was like, right, we got to save this round. That'll give us 2 rounds later. The next one will be a half buy. And then after that, and he never ever gambled. He never did a force buy the whole time. And luckily, he actually did win the map on the very last map. It's like the one map they won in the series from memory, right? Now, apparently that's what he's doing with his fucking salary. Like, all of his salary from North, he was like, right, I put it into a high APR account with high yield, and it gets compound interest over the years. I invest some of it into a medium danger stock level, and now apparently he has like Google stock and all Bitcoin or something. I don't know, fucking hell. All right, mate, you're killing it.
No, it's not like that. I'm not so rich. Relax.
Okay, fair enough.
Relax. Yeah,
Moses. Go on.
Yeah, no man.
What do you think, Moses? Because in this topic, right, I guess it's actually unfair to ask you because in theory, as far as I can tell, your GM, which is just Nazgul, by the way, if people don't know, he actually handles the signings and stuff. Seems like you've been given everything you want, mate. You got Fallen. The team seems to be going where you want. It sounds like you're one of the few teams that doesn't have this problem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm got in a very lucky position to be part of Liquid, who I think they've done like a really even smart and a good job with their players over the years, even before I joined. I mean, how many different teams or orgs can you list that I mean, Nitro and Elige were signed in 2015 when Liquid entered Counter-Strike, and they were here until 2020, and Elige is still here. So that's pretty legit, and that says a lot, I think, about the org, that you could have two players who even felt comfortable to stay there in an esports space. Like, plenty of players have not only have left teams just because the org was a fucking train wreck. So I feel very good in that regard, and I mean, even I don't know. Every conversation I've had with Liquid has always been geared about what's going to make us win, what's going to make us better. And when I kind of brought Fallen, the idea of Fallen to them, it was like, let's talk and let's make sure that this is the right move that's going to make us win, and then we'll see if we can get it done. So yeah, I think as far as like a typical GM, like as you said, we don't have one, so I don't know exactly what these GMs do in other games. Nazgul, he's pretty hands on and he's pretty up to date of everything going on within the squad. So yeah, for instance, most of the shit I know about being a GM, I've heard from Henry from his brief stint in Cloud9. But I mean, I've also heard the fucking crazy ass stories.
Just do the opposite of everything he told you, basically.
I've heard
too soon.
I've heard like the nightmare stories that you just mentioned, where an organization's GM for their Cloud9 team was like an Overwatch player that was hired at OWL. It was like the Overwatch coach for that team, who then transitioned and is now he's like the FPS GM. So he's not only the GM of Counter-Strike, but also the GM of Valorant. And it's like, this is craziness. And like, he doesn't come from either one of the games to really understand what you have to be looking for in a player. So yeah, I mean, it's nice to have like people that have these titles of GMs, and I'm sure there's some very good ones out there, but at the moment I only hear the horror stories essentially. So yeah, I don't know. That'd be a weird job, especially when it comes to Counter-Strike right now, where you don't know, like it depends on the teams. Like, as I mentioned, like Liquid's been great with Counter-Strike, and they want to win, and that's the primary goal, and that's the primary focus that we're trying to achieve. In other orgs, you don't know if their primary goal is to win.
Yes.
I hear a lot of stories from people within the NA scene, especially that the NA orgs, not just in Counter-Strike, but a lot of the ones that are operating in other games, are usually like a lot of it is geared towards obviously making money, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But you know, if your priority as a coach and a player is to win, and your priority as an organization is to make money and be profitable, there's obviously going to be some conflict and some friction there at some point.
Sure. Yeah, just by the way, just so people don't take it out of context, obviously Moses was just mainly thinking about Nitro when he said Elige was with them till 2020. Though, to be fair, when I watched that G2 game, I could have forgotten he was playing for Liquid in 2021. Listen, Elige, you're really good, mate. It's one of the only times I'm ever going to actually get to slam you like that. So fucking turn up, bitch. Could have won the tournament. Just saying, whatever. Just saying.
Don't make me defend my players here on a podcast. I can't be doing that shit.
Actually, you know what? I will say one thing, which I've already said to Moses like privately previously, but I notice people don't mention this. Dude, one thing I will say about Elige is I actually don't think he gets enough props, mainly because unfortunately Liquid was playing in NA last year mostly and no one cared about the competition. But like during that whole last year when we were all raving justifiably about like Ziwu, fucking Simple, like these guys are the best every tournament, how do they do it? Like, dude, Elige is right there. Like, that guy almost never has a bad tournament. It's unreal how consistent he is. So I give him props in that sense. And also he's a rifler, he's not just fucking using the AWP like a noob or whatever. I don't know.
Fucking aggressive rifler too.
Yeah, there you go.
He doesn't chill.
There you go. Right, Hawka, what do you think on this topic? Obviously, you're not in the world of trying to be a GM or whatever, but I'm sure as an outsider, like when you see some of the names that, as we say, it's not even that you can get them with a buyout. There's names that are like, you can sign someone tomorrow who's like won a major or, you know, who's legendary players. Like, and as far as you can tell, I mean, especially if some of them going to Valorant, like some of them just don't get the offers. Like, what are your thoughts on the current space at the moment? Because it feels like we're in a different space than we were the last few years for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are still some orgs that I've seen that I think are making good moves. Like the org I look at is this new ENTS lineup. They just all look like really solid pickups to me.
This is a fucking bold take right now.
Wait, really?
Coming in hot with the listen of all the heel turns. You're now riding with ENTS.
I am, because these pickups are solid, man. Look, Snappy,
some good players there, yeah.
Yeah, Snappy is a good pickup. Like that contact team. Just look down the like Liquipedia of that contact team and how many times they just shifted to random players. And even just some of the players on that team, I don't think you want to have
he never had the
as an
pieces
IGL.
To work with. No.
And then you bring in Spinks, who at least has a bit of history with Snappy. I think he showed some promise. Like, he's a decent gamble. And then Diha, I don't know why Sprout cut him, honestly. I think he was their best player. I guess they wanted to go full German, but he's another like really solid, aggressive rifler.
Probably Sprout, baby.
Yeah, and like we're already seeing them do pretty decently at the Pro League, right? They nearly beat Virtus Pro. I mean, obviously, everyone is more looking at the fact that they somehow managed to lose that series. But all those moves are, to me, look like really good moves that are probably really cheap. And I'm sure there are like loads of more moves like this that are out there. So I almost feel like it's kind of like the tier 2 and tier 3 teams that have to make these really good moves.
Yes,
so they kind of have got the good GMs, right? I mean, even Endpoint, they picked up Flames and now they've just sold them for loads, right? They kind of have to do this to survive. So they put more weight into that. And it seems like they're the ones that are making the good pickups nowadays.
Maybe we can talk about a few moves then, because actually, like, we can tangent this into stuff that MSL wants to talk about. What were you going to say, Moses?
Is there a list of free agents somewhere?
I was trying to find one.
Isn't there one on HLTV.org?
I couldn't find it.
I'm not sure.
Is that just an old
see
thing?
one guy on Twitter like sending a list every day, like updating.
And I'm like, surely that's somewhere on a website that I can just call back and look up to. I was just trying to make like a Word document off the top of my head. I have MSL, obviously, Kenny S, Guardian, Woxic, Flusha. Then I got my boy Zeppa and Floppy in there. And I'm sure there's a million that are huge names that I'm forgetting. I just can't, they're not coming to me right now.
Fair enough. Right, one big move that is tangential to MSL's career is one of the signings for OG was Niko. Obviously, Niko with the lowercase k, the one that played with him, actually, funnily enough, initially at that DreamHack Stockholm event. That was actually the first event they brought him in, from memory, if I'm wrong, or maybe they had him one event before or something. Obviously, you're going to have a different perspective from most people on this player. Like, I noticed most people at MSL were a bit underwhelmed by this because they hoped, naively, this was going to be like Rops or something. You know, they wanted some, like, massive name signing that's like a superstar player. So I noticed a lot of people weren't actually very high on Niko. What would you say about this player and what you think he's going to add to OG? Because I know you were always, like, a big fan of his, right? You thought he was a good player.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's just a really good role player and a good team player, and I feel like it's one of the players. Like I don't trust a lot of players, but he is one of the players that I would say I trust a lot. And yeah, I just think he's a very solid player. He's not the player who's gonna carry every game, but he's the player who will show up and be consistent. And he's also creating a good atmosphere, like he
does a lot of jokes and stuff.
I remember on LAN, like he's making jokes all the time. Like when we went in Stockholm, he was like, when Navi came over to us in the quarterfinals, he was like making fun of them and so on. And Navi was like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And yeah, he's just I think he's really good.
I also, just quickly, MSL, I want to ask, because I've watched a couple of demos back, and I think aside to Niko that people might not know is that he's one of the few players who I actually see do occasional shit talking in chat. So like, does he just have this like confidence about him that he is just gonna like shit talking game and sometimes type things? Not like proper shit talking, it's like jokey, but he'll type a little joke in chat sometimes. Is that sort of confidence he has about him?
He does it both out game and in game. He's a kind of funny guy, and he don't really have a stop clause with it, so it can also be painful sometimes in practice. But if you manage it, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons he got kicked from Heroic, because it can be a problem if you don't manage it, I think. But I would say the opposite of him in game versus this is way better, like for me.
Sure. And then obviously in OG, one of the players he joins, another former teammate of yours, is Valde. But one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about Valde is because, first of all, I mean, me and Hawka saw this at Flashpoint too. Like, he looks like actually he's been in some very good form at the end of last year. And more importantly, he looks like he plays a totally different role and style than he did when he was with your teams back in the day, mate. So what do you think of who Valde is as a player now, MSL?
I think it's a lot the same. Like, he's taking the worse roles, or worse and worse. He is taking a lot of anchor positions, not really the star roles, and he's still putting up insane numbers. I just think he's he's an insane player. He's the best, like, complete player I have ever played with, and the player that I trusted the most out of all teams I have played on. I can say that. And I think he had a rough time after he was in-game leader on North. To come back to OG, then I think he needed to find his form again. Because when you switch to in-game leader, your brain begins to think in a whole different way.
Sure.
Like, you're not thinking so much individually, and I think it's the same thing that happened with Magisk now, that he needs to transform into a player again instead of in-game leader. So yeah, I think that was his problem in the beginning, but now he's coming back, and I can already feel like that Alexi have the same feeling about Valde that I had, where he's your second guy and you trust him a lot.
By the way, just a random piece of trivia, since you mentioned that he did become the IGL in North. On this actual show, we had him on, and this is like a couple of years ago when he was still the IGL of North, and he actually did say MSL. Funnily enough, I asked him about you, because obviously I thought it'd be an interesting topic, because some people think you're overrated, blah, blah, blah. And he basically said he didn't actually know that North had a system that they played in until you left, and then he was like, and he took over, and then it was like, fuck, what are we doing? Like, I thought this shit just all went like, they thought it was just all supposed to work, like be obvious or something,
You don't realize what you have until it's gone.
There you go.
Yeah. Do you think Valde is, as someone who's played with him, do you think he's more suited to being in star positions, or do you like him more in these kind of anchor roles that you see him in nowadays?
I think I like him more in the anchor roles because he's playing it so good that you can still have like 2 star players in other roles, and he is performing as well. Yeah. So it's like, I think it's a really, really special thing, like really special.
Yeah, I think it is going to be interesting seeing how OG look going forwards, because in the games I saw them play, I think they played like a DreamHack qualifier recently. It seemed like Valde's spots were changing somewhat. Like, I don't think he was playing ramp on nuke anymore. I think he was playing main, maybe. I think he got changed off of A long on Dust 2 over to B. Like, there were a couple of changes in his spots. So I'm definitely looking at what sort of positions he moves into, because like you guys were saying, I kind of like him in the spots he was already playing, but it seems like they might change it up now. I mean, we've got to see when Flames comes in, if that's going to continue. But I definitely think he's really good in those spots where he gets the most out of positions where he shouldn't. And his numbers have just been like absurdly good in those positions, right? Like he's putting up star player numbers in those spots. So that's definitely something to watch on this new lineup. I'm not sure exactly how those roles are going to work out.
I think honestly that you can put Valde in any role and he will learn how to play it. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, every conversation I've had with him over the years, he's one of those guys that gives you like the impression that he's someone that doesn't mess around. He just does the hard work. He's got his own like self-discipline that he's into, which shouldn't be surprising considering he's in the fucking military and all that. But I don't know. He's always been super impressive to discuss Counter-Strike with, because he has a very open mind, but then he's also very convinced and very sure and very confident in how he thinks about the game. So yeah, I think it says everything if your in-game leader trusts someone to that extent. I mean, that's the biggest thing for an in-game leader, is being able to trust and rely on somebody to do what he needs to do, and that's not always available.
Yeah, I would definitely echo like what Moses is saying there. Like one of the other things is Valde does seem to have a very, very good attitude, and I actually think his attitude is more suited to those sorts of roles, believe it or not. Because even though he's certainly a confident guy, and the interesting thing is, it's like he understands that if he can take those roles and succeed at them, which are really tricky spots to play, then the team, that's OP. Basically, if people don't know, I guess I'll use this reference because now it's actually an old reference, but like anyone who followed the game know what I mean. When Zipnix first became who now you think of as Zipnix, he actually used to have pretty good skills back then. People don't know this, and he used to, in fact, be a star player in Fnatic at the beginning of CSGO. So what people don't know is he chose to take on hard roles like that and then master it. But the point is, one of the reasons why Zipnix is so famous is, if you have a player with that skill set who then becomes the player who plays all the shit positions, that's OP. Like, no one else is going to have that in theirs. Like, unfortunately, a lot of those people who play those positions, it's like the defender in football. You just play that spot because when you were 11, you weren't fast enough and you couldn't score goals, so you have to play defense. Like, there's very rare that you get the player who's actually, like, super athletic, amazing, like, wanted to be a defender. So if someone wants to do that shit and they can do it, like, here's the problem. When I used to say I wanted Valde to be the star in OG, that's just because I didn't think some of the other players were good enough at their roles. If I actually look at the team, if I could choose, I'd keep him in his current roles. I'd just bring in other fraggers. And then I think the team would be like literally like 1.5 times better. Like, you'd be so good, it'd be very hard to beat you, I think. What about then? Let's switch up that. Let's do another player. Obviously, one that's pretty relevant right now in terms of the current games is the aforementioned config, right, MSL? In complexity, I'll admit this. When I did that article about him, where I sort of called him out, like just before he joined this team, and I sort of said, like, you know, you're fucking up your career and you could have been one of the great. When he said on Twitter, like, yeah, you know, I'm going to fix him, I kind of thought, like, that might just be a tweet, you know, maybe he's just saying that to, like, make people not attack him. He actually seems like he really does, like, believe he had to change it around, turn it around. So what have you thought of the complexity era of his career, MSL?
Yeah, I think it has been very good for him. I feel like I got him again in Optic, and I didn't feel the hunger or motivation from him. So I think when Optic closed down and like he saw that he needed to go to US and so on, I think something like sparkled inside him that he needs to really focus now and get himself back on track. And maybe your article also worked a bit on him. But yeah, I think he have. It's just my impression. I don't know for sure. I didn't talk extremely a lot with him, but I think he have played a lot more CS individually, because in the Optic time he didn't really play so much CS. He only like did our practice. So I think he have started playing a lot, and it's paying off. Like he has played insane.
What do you guys think? Anyone?
Hawka?
Yeah, I think it also, whenever I look at this complexity team, I just love that he has Rush to go in on some of those shit entry spots, and then he can go in on normally good entry spots, because Rush is really, really good at doing exactly what he needs to do to make sure config can have a really good chance if he is being that second man in. There are just so many times where you can see Rush is, he's not playing for the kill on his entry routes. He's just making sure he draws the attention or makes sure the CT has to look at two spots at once. And then it's just even easier for config, who obviously has those pop-off rounds all the time. Complexity as a team, they seem to be pretty loose. And I'm kind of wondering whether that is good or bad for config in a sense. I'm not entirely sure, because he definitely, you get the highs from that, right? If he's loose and able to go across the map, I think that works. But there are times where I wonder if he can get the positioning right in some of those rounds. Like, I kind of think of Mirage as a map where sometimes I feel like config can do his best work when they actually have more of a set plan at the start of the round. And sometimes I feel like they call rounds where it's more about Blame F trying to figure them out mid-round. And then I kind of wonder if config does as well. But yeah, like in general, I just think he's been really, really good on this team. And he has those occasional tournaments where he goes crazy and has ridiculous numbers. And those are the tournaments normally where complexity become a proper contender for the tournament.
What would you say to that, by the way, MSL? Do you basically, like, what he was almost like politely saying there is, like, you know, sometimes his decision making might be a bit suspect, or he might position himself in a way that's not ideal, right? As his in-game leader previously, do you think he benefits from structure more than other players? What do you think of how he works in call?
Yeah, I mean, I think when he was really good with me, it was mostly that I suicided for him, and after we stopped playing together, he had pretty rough period, and now he came back to complexity where, as Hawka said, Rush is doing a lot of the dirty work, and config can be in the trade position, which I think suits him best. And I think in general, yeah, I think structure is good for config, because like he has the most insane aim I have ever played with, for sure, but his decision making is not so good always, and in that way, I think it's good if you can help him on that. And then, yeah, sometimes he just goes crazy, like he's playing in the structure, but then sometimes he goes out of the structure and just kill 3 people and you win the round. Like, that's, yeah, I think that's what suits him best.
I know one thing, by the way, Moses, that actually maybe you have a comment on is one of the players that basically everyone but you actually had written off was Rush, obviously, because, like, let's face it, like, he was the one in Optic that went bad, and then in Cloud9 he went bad. Like, a lot of people, I mean, he himself, people saw publicly, knew he was in bad shape and his career was going badly. But interesting thing is, like, it does seem like he has found, like, the perfect player to play with in that sense, because I know if Config himself said he really loves playing Rush. It seems like the two of them complement each other so well, what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Rush is, I don't know, like, why I always liked him was, I mean, I guess it's kind of tough for the average fan to see it, but I know, like, just talking to him, you can just tell the kind of person he is and the kind of mentality that he has and the kind of, how he carries himself, which is great. But also, I mean, he's just I think he's a player that I always enjoy watching, and I enjoy watching this in like every team. Like I'm not always so much like I don't get as starstruck by like the players who put up huge numbers. I like guys like Rush. I like watching guys like Rush who do a lot of the dirty work and do a lot of like these are all platitudes, but the things that don't show up on scoreboards, for instance. And I mean, you could just tell, like I used to say with the old Optic team, that the team, if they ever wanted to like win championships, this was back, like I was saying this on the desk of E-League Season 2, an event that they went on to win, that if Optic was ever going to reach a great level, it was Rush who had to get activated, because he's someone who, while he may not have as much individual success, he's just a player that unlocks other players just by the way he plays the game and just by the decisions that he makes inside of the game. And you can just kind of see it in the way that he moves around the map in different scenarios. So, that was the thing for me, is like, no matter how bad of a game he might have had, when you hit tab and you see his kill death ratio or how many frags he has, you could just still see him doing like all the good things in the game that should be enabling his teammates to do well. So I've always been super high on Rush. And I mean, it is one of the unfortunate things about players like that, where if that's your style of play, you are not always going to have the success that you probably deserve by how good you play. You need the right people and the right teammates around you, and that's what they have in Complexity. And that's what Complexity became. That's the true realization of what Juggernaut became. Is, I mean, blame F, big gamble and picking him up and seeing the in-game leader that he became, big gamble and picking Config up and seeing if he could realize his potential again, and a big gamble in Rush. And maybe it's the fact that all of them were gambles and all the players had that same kind of mentality that they had to prove the world wrong, but you can see they're fitting together and they're working together really well. So Rush for me is just someone who enables the people around him and his teammates to do a better job in their roles as well, which has always been something special that he carries with him.
I'm definitely with MSL as well, by the way, about like Config's aim is so nuts. Like, I don't think people realize, they probably do now because they got good again, but like even when he was in even when he was an Optica, they weren't a very good team. Like, mate, just look with your eyes. You could, maybe the guy's not motivated, but when, like, I give you the best example, right? Obviously, if you say to someone, if you could take any player's skills and you could have them or whatever, right now it's like there's a cheat answer because you just say simple as Ebu, don't you? They're just so good. So if we talk about in the past when just humans played Counter-Strike, not fucking aliens, mate, I would have taken Config over any of the other, but I don't give a fuck about Device. You can take all those guys. Because here's the thing, mate. If you know when he's on his game, Config's Deagle and AK, mate, just give me maybe half those skills. I'll tear up tier 1. Yeah. That's why I even told this guy privately and publicly, mate, it has to just be your head that's fucked up. Like, your skills are obviously insane. Every teammate, even the ones who hate you, say you have the best team ever. Like, if someone tells you that, you have to sort of take stock and realise it's me who's in my own way. I could be the best.
It's funny conversation that you guys have about like providing config with structure and the best structure, because like no matter how much structure, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, but I know my sense of Counter-Strike and even coaching now is like you give someone structure to a certain extent, like they have a certain role to fill and how the strategy begins and how like maybe the round opens up and the default and what their plan is, but there's a certain point of the round where you can no longer give anyone structure. Like, maybe they go into a part of the map and they take map control and Rush dies, Config trades the player, and Rush is on one side of the map. The other team is, you can't provide structure to Config anymore. From there, he's just got to play his game. And that's, I think, the scariest part of Config is when he has some space to make his own decisions, whether they're bad or not, like his fucking aim is freakish. And I can't tell you the amount of times in scrims, it's just like you're browsing between players on Liquid and you just see like fucking 3 players just take 1 bullet to the head and it's all config showing up in the upper screen. It's just so fast. So, I mean, he's like a really, really dangerous player to just, have with that kind of an aim to be somewhere on the map and maybe the opponents lose track of him and then all of a sudden they just don't even have a chance.
Yeah, when he's in his good periods, it's where like, even if he makes a bad decision, his aim just helps him. Like he will kill the guys, and this is like, I think that's the difference between when he struggled and now, and also before, is exactly this, that his aim is just back on now, and I feel like he gets out of bad places. So, like I remember a clutch on Mirage where he's 1-on-1 and he don't reload his gun. He have 1 AK bullet and he just 1 tap, boom.
If I can find it and remember it, I'll link this clip, because the one he's talking about, he's in a clutch, right? And even though he could reload, by the way, no one's pushing him, he could do it, he stays with 1 bullet in the chamber, and the guy fucking jumps and he just headshots him. Like, Just like at that point in time, like you just sit the guy down, like, look, I don't care how good your aim is, at least have like more than one bullet for. What if he crouched at that moment? We just did the content. But at the same time, I agree. Listen, if you're that good, like part of you is just like, I guess you can get away with it. It's like in basketball, they have a concept, right, where when someone's taking what looks like a terrible shot, the coach is going like, no, and then when they make it, it's like, good shot. It's like, what can you do at that point? Like they made it.
Wait. First of all, fuck that clutch. What did you think when he pulled his knife out on overpass?
I remember like Magisk and Kajun when he did it, after he did it, and one day were just sitting and screaming at him like, what the fuck are you doing? And they got so mad. Like I had to do in the freeze time, shut up guys, shut up, relax. Like there was like so little 3 seconds of freeze time left after this. So it was like, yeah.
That was the most mental thing I've ever seen in my life.
Was it a major?
I was mad as well, but I had to calm the other guys down because if I got mad too, we would not win that match, I think.
What's it like having to, I mean, not even necessarily with Config, but I mean, Config's probably a good example because he is so skilled, but like, let's say Config makes like the complete wrong decision in a round, like a blatantly, objectively wrong decision, but then gets like a triple kill and wins it. Or like, if let's say it's any player, like how hard is it? Because I know this is an experience that I have sometimes. Is like, how hard is it to be like, I want to criticize him and tell him that he did the wrong thing, but then he destroyed everyone. So like, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah, it's hard, but I think like a lot of times I told him we were good friends back then, and I think still now. But back then I just said like, this was so stupid, but you're so fucking good.
Yes. And by the way, like you said before about like he gets into bad situations, that's also like a classic line that actually, it's another area where if Config ever did want to be the actual best player, this is where he would have to improve. Basically, there's a similar saying I've heard in sports where like players will say the same thing, like some player will hit like an impossible shot, and then when their coach tells them like, yeah, but don't position yourself like that, they'll be like, but I hit the shot. And they'll be like, yeah, but you wouldn't have needed to if you'd have just positioned better. Like you could have hit an easier shot, you know, like the whole point is a great player sometimes wouldn't put themselves in a bad situation, have to sort of do a miracle shot to get out of it, which I realise again, unfortunately, modern CS fans are again sort of ruined because they're seeing Simple seemingly do that all the time and then kill everyone. But you have to realise, like, I have a rule for Simple, right? Which is if Simple does what I think is bad positioning, I'm wrong on that one. Like, actually, he's just so good now that actually all his positioning's fine. I'm cool with it all. I used to think, like a lot of people, Moses used to say the same. I used to think sometimes he was too aggressive. At this point, I'll just let you handle it, Simple. You seem to know what you're doing on a lot of these scenarios.
No, he's still too aggressive at times, but you're that good, you get it.
Especially against Team Liquid.
Yes.
That's the other thing about players like this. Like if you're making bad decisions and still making plays like that, it's almost like a cheat code because it means even if you're playing against the top teams, you're probably not going to drop off as much as other players because you're just hitting these stupid shots that the top teams can't even deal with, right? There's a similar thing in basketball where if you can just hit all the hard shots, it doesn't matter if you're against the best defense in the world because they're not going to impact you as much because you're just that good. So I think there's definitely something to Config just getting away with stuff like that. It should help him against top teams as well, which is a pretty cool concept, I think. And I don't think we have too many players that are like that.
Right. Here's an obvious topic to talk about just with the current climate, which is Astralis MSL. Now, the good news is, let's be real, you can get, unlike everyone else Danish, mate, you can actually give your real opinion because you're never going to be in Astralis. Joke, obviously, he'll be in the 10th man on the roster in about 4 years, replacing Glaive as the agent because they're all going to rotate out, remember? No, but seriously, what do you think of where the team's at the moment? Like, I'm not one of these people who tries to rush to say people are going to fall off. They were obviously fantastic at the end of last year and early on, like there's a time, it looked like it kind of eats like they could have gone further, but you've seen in these tournaments, like they are taking losses that people maybe aren't used to seeing them lose from, etc. Obviously, there's all these rumours. Do they keep Bobsky? Will they get another player? Will some of the same players stay? What do you think of where Astralis is at the moment?
I think they're in a bad place right now, but I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I feel like something is going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about because I don't think a CEO would go out on Twitter and write free Bubsky after they lost 2-0 to
You don't think he was trolling?
I don't know, but I don't think so. I don't know, but yeah.
All I'm going to say is, listen, Lyhom, I don't even use his real name now. He doesn't get to have a real name. Listen, Lyhom, if he was free, I could get him into a team tomorrow. Your problem is, it's more like $700,000, Bobsky. Yeah, it's a bit of a different hashtag, that, isn't it? Oh, did I just say that on air? guess you'll have to suck my dick then. Right, there we go. Anyway, keep going, MSL. What you saying, mate?
Yeah, but that's out game. I don't know how important.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I would say like I think it's hard for them and like to motivate themselves online and like I think obviously they're doing the work, but it's just a different thing online. And there's a lot of things I could go into with online versus LAN. Like I'm also semi-arguing on Twitter right now. So,
sure.
How's that going for you? You winning that one?
Well, here's the problem, Moses.
But I'm.
Unfortunately, we'll get to that topic in a second. Unfortunately, I did curse MSL by retweeting the tweet. So you have to understand, I've sent the sort of nutters that follow me to argue with him. So I'm sure he's probably never ended at this point.
But I'm going on HLTV confirmed on Monday, so I think maybe I will have a war with Sponge then.
There we go.
So we will see.
Ooh.
But I think my opinion is that they will come back once it land, because I think when you have won so much as they have done, I think it's hard to keep it up online. And many people will say it's an excuse, but I just think it's a reality that it's so much different online. And one of the things with Astralis is that they get so many easy kills on lane, because people, when you go on lane, there's so many things like communication is not as good because the sound is not as good. You can hear the crowd. There's a lot of things going on, and I just think Astralis gets so many easy kills because of their structure and because people make easier mistakes here.
All you need to know, I feel like the big thing to me that stood out when we went into the online era was there was that quote from Glaive, which was something like, if Bubsky wants to play as the sixth man on this team, he needs to start playing more passively. And like, look at some of the other guys that are doing well online, man. Like, you think Ykindar's doing that? Like, there is so many players that are doing really well aggressively nowadays. And I think you could bring Bubsky into the lineup and he could do a lot of good things online, right? Like, it just doesn't feel like Astralis have adapted that well online, which I think is clear for anyone to see. And then I also think the other side of it is, especially when we first went online, there was obviously going to be the difficulty of just staying motivated to some extent, right? Like, you're obviously not happy playing online. And I almost wonder whether that still comes through now. Because in some of the games I see, I almost feel like Astralis are used to their structure and stuff working really well for them. So they stick to the same sort of game plan for probably too long when it's still not working. Like in the Vertigo game against Furia, it felt like Astralis wanted to fight for A ramp every time, because maybe they're used to getting away with that with all their structure and their protocols, and they were just losing the fights pretty much every time. And I think if we go back to LAN, there's a decent chance that some of the stuff they are practicing works better. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be the best team again, but like, I think everyone probably agrees they're going to be better when they go back to LAN, right?
By the way, do you actually think, MSL, that they should use Bobsky in the lineup?
I mean, for this online period, maybe, but I think once they get lane, I think I would not change anything for them. That's my point of view.
Sure. I'll even give like a side angle, because I know obviously everyone, especially on this show, we've even done it a million times. We've talked about the whole LAN versus online, so we've made a million points. I'll give you another point that's like a tangential one that a lot of people won't have considered, especially if they've never been pros, which is part of what makes a great team, like especially a dominant team that's going in the finals or the semi-finals every time, like Astralis. Part of how you manage that psychologically, and this is where fans get upset, is... right, I'll just say it straight up. You don't put 100% focus into every single game at the tournament. Like, if you're playing in a group stage, it's not that you don't try. Mentally, you try to. It's just that you can't. Like, you can't make yourself focus for a random game against a team who'll never beat you in the group stage. It's like a meaningless map on LAN when you know that, like, I'm going to play the semi-finals against this team, and then I've got this team that's beaten me. I'm going to play in the final. Like, you sort of conserve your energy in a way. People know when, it's like they know when their brain needs to kick in again. The problem, I think, is if you look online, there are no warm-up games, mate. Like, you can play a team that's ranked 27th. They might just dust you off 2-0. Like, it's brutal. At the moment, you almost have to play like it's the final. final every game. And who the fuck can keep that up? Like, even the greatest players are just human. Like, everyone's going to have a game like where, lose focus. Obviously, you try Gamershops. There's code Thooorin at Gamershops.gg, 10% off. And then, or 10% of your game will disappear, if you don't, but whatever. It's not a fact. That was just a witty comment I came up with.
You tried to shoehorn the last thing onto it.
I know I went too far with that. It's like config, I had got the first 2 kills. I was like, fuck it, I'm getting them all. And then the guy killed me or something. The last, I just ran around, got naded.
I will say, I think what the online era has essentially done has like made, if you look at like the ranking list on like HLTV, like I think if we go to a LAN, like let's say a LAN is tomorrow, I think essentially like 1 through 15 is all pretty fucking competitive. Like you get on to 15, which is FaZe. If you're the number 2 seed at Astralis, if you had to face FaZe in the first round because you're the second seed, you'd be like, what the fuck? I got the second seed. How am I playing a team like this? But in the online era, like it's not just the top 15. Like that does probably extend all the way down to like the 25th team, the 25th place team. It like adds 10 rankings of danger into these seedings into tournaments, which is so scary. Like even I mean, Endpoint was actually surprisingly a thorn in a lot of teams' side, like ours included.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of teams online who come in and it's just very, very difficult for whatever reason. It might be like maybe a motivation thing with online games, with the fact that this has been going on for so long. It might be that maybe we haven't seen them play a whole lot against top teams, so you don't really know what to expect. It might be because they're just over aggressive because they're online and they haven't been at top tier Counter-Strike, and that's the way they play, and it catches you off guard. There's a million reasons why they could be dangerous, but there's just a very deep field of like dangerous teams now in all of these events. So I think even when we get back to LANs, I don't think the group stages are going to be any slouches anymore. There's a lot of really good teams, and now a lot of these players who were like in untouchable lineups up until like 2018 and were out of the game for like a year or two, and now they're kind of back in these teams who are kind of rising up. When we get back to LAN, these group stages are going to be no joke. Like it's going to be like tournaments where you can't even take LAN like group stage games off anymore, outside of, I don't know, maybe like some of the ones that extend to like different regions, and those teams usually you could probably go autopilot.
MSL, obviously, when you said those comments about like online's different and, like when we get to LAN, some teams will be better, right? People are going to think you're just being a hater or like, you haven't had that much success in the online period. So let's flip it the other way. Of these teams that have come up, could be a team, could be a player if you want. Of the teams, we've had a whole bunch of them go top 5, win events. That were teams that never anyone would have thought would do anything online. Like, they were unknowns online. Is there one that sticks out to you that you think actually will be really good online, that would make a good transition? Is there someone who has impressed you?
A lot of. Do you mean player or team?
Team, ideally, but if not team, just a player, maybe.
I think like with this comment, I also want to say like I think a lot of teams have improved, and I think that they will be good on LAN. The thing is just that I think Astralis will be better than them on LAN.
Right.
And this is my point of view. Like. I think Gambit and Heroic have improved insane, to name a few, and like cadiaN have, before this online era, I felt like he was not really a good in-game leader or Orber, and after this online era, I feel like he is one of the best. So I think he has improved a lot, and for me, it's just about like, for example, cadiaN. How will it be on LAN? For Nafani, I don't know, from Gambit, he haven't been like, when you sit in a stadium in a quarterfinal, a semifinal, it's just so different. And there's so much about experience. I feel like that you need to go through some losses before you get to the very top and win trophies. Like, think about how many times Astralis had to lose quarterfinals and semifinals in stadiums before they got the trophies. And the same goes for me. Like, first time we went to an arena with Dignitas, we sucked so hard. Like, we were so bad. And I think it will happen for them as well. But maybe, like, after some times, they will of course adapt and probably be better. But it's gonna hit different, I think. And this is what I meant. What I tweeted.
They have one advantage, I think, over teams in the past, because in the past when you'd go to LAN events as like an underdog team, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same way on myself. I've talked about this a couple of times. There is like, you realize like one of the big jumps a team makes is when they finally realize that they can beat the best teams in the world on land. Like that confidence, like after you win one is so beneficial to like when players finally are like, oh, we can actually handle these teams. We're not actually getting entirely outclassed. And all of these teams playing online right now have that confidence already. Like you don't have to beat them on land to get that confidence. So at the very least, they have like a leg up. That's not saying they're still going to perform, but Gambit's going to go into the first LAN event and be like, yeah, we've already beaten all these teams. Like we have no problem stacking up against them. So they've already kind of got one foot in the door, which is one of like that's the cool benefits of the online area for the underdog teams who have come up.
Basically, it's like that meme of the fucking like Pyro from TF2 where it's like, none of these things scare me, but then obviously it shows Copenhagen Flames. It's like, but this terrifies me or whatever. Because bizarrely, I don't know if anyone knows this, but when Gambit won that event, like I am Katowice undefeated. Well, they lost at one time, and then they had the fucking sick run through play. For some bizarre reason, it was some like sweet snow cup that they just lost to Copenhagen Flames for no reason. So I don't know. That if anything shows that the online area is like, boys, even the dominant team loses one randomly.
Fickle beast.
You what?
Online era is a fickle beast.
True.
Back and forth.
But I agree with you that this spirit have, of course, given them a lot of confidence, both Heroic and Gambit, and I think they can use that. But I also think, like, let's say they are in a quarterfinal, the round is 14-14. Does Nafani call the same online as lane? Like, there's, I can say there's a big difference, and I think you need to go through certain things before you you know what I mean.
Also, here's the thing, right? Even though, like, by the way, I'm actually a lot more up on Heroic than I used to be because the old lineup they had, I think that's a pure online roster. I mean, it's like every player in that team at one point in time was supposed to be the third best fragger on a team, just all in one squad, and even cadiaN fits that fucking bill. So I remember looking at that team and being like, there's no way this gets to land. But I actually think the roster moves they've made actually make more sense in terms of the team structure now. One thing I will say, though, because I just had a look now, MSL. Listen, I'm not going to hate on him either, because I actually like the guy, cadiaN. But I've seen you play a lot of Counter-Strike cadiaN, and I just looked this up now, right? It doesn't matter what time frame you put on the stats page. You could put just the last 3 months, the last 6 months, the last 9 months, the last 12. Basically, during the online period, cadiaN's like HLTV rating is like 1.2 something. Listen, I'm not hating on you or anything, cadiaN, but that ain't going to land, mate. Like, you're not fucking Ziwu. Like, you're not going to be that fucking rating every game, so that's going to drop off immediately. Let's just be real, you know. Unless you are you'd have to have made a pretty big career transition, put it that way, to be that good after like a year or something. Come on.
I will say that when I have seen that demos, he have made a huge like improvement on all aspects, and I think he's really smart now, and I think their T-sides are also really good. Like, I stole a lot of stuff from them at the end, where they had a lot of gimmicks move that I took because I thought it was very smart. And I will say that I think that Hunden he have played a huge role in cadiaN improving like this, and also Heroic improving like this. I just think Hunden, for me, also, like, he was one of the in-game leaders that learned me a lot, so I think he is a really good coach, and I think it has meant a lot for them.
Sure. Listen, I agree, he's improved, so you know what? I'm actually going to pick you to beat Giuliano next time, cadiaN. I think you probably win that rematch. I want to see it. Hotly anticipate.
How long ago was that?
It was years ago at this point. It was about 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it? I know. That's why it's actually sad that people keep referencing it. It's like, mate, it's like a fucking fun tournament as well. It's not like it was in the major final or something. He just got dominated. It was a fucking 1v1 tournament or whatever, wasn't it? So what? It was fun. Also, let's be real. The real reason why that was funny wasn't even that, like, you know, you'd have to see a girl about it. The real reason is just because everyone sort of hated cadiaN at the time. Like, it was like the perfect player for it to happen to. You know, just the way it goes, I'm afraid, boys. Yeah. Right. What about this then? So we've just moved on to Heroic generally there in that sense. Right. One thing I want to ask you about actually, MSL, and in fact, generally everyone, because everyone here will have seen some of these players play. Like, one player I found very interesting in heroic, because I saw him in Copenhagen Flames in Flashpoint 1, was Tesses, right? And dude, this is one of the players that made me certain some people in CSGO don't have what's called an eye test. They can't just watch and see that you're good, because this is another player MSL where if you watched, it's like, it's not as extreme as Config, but you just watch this guy's crosshair, like he has to have insane skill. Like, look, he's clearly a very good aimer. Like, there's a guy who didn't have a lot of experience on LAN and stuff. So to me, I was amazed it took even that long to get to Heroic, because remember, Heroic wasn't a top team at the time. They were like 15th or whatever. So what do you think of this player? Because obviously he's not super experienced. He's another player we might have to look to on LAN. But to me, the eye test looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I played with him like 2 months in Optic when...
Hey, it was like a stand-in or something, right?
Yeah, when all this mess with Brazilian team, and we couldn't have 2 CS teams, so we had to get stand-in and not buy anyone and so on. But I think he had insane aim, and I think we had Config at that time, and I gave Config a lot of the star roles. But I think, like for example, Overpass A, I gave Thesis, and he just played so insane. So I think, if I would have given him better roles, then I think he would have done very, very good. And you see now in Heroic that he's doing great. So I also think like he was one of the guys that I could feel like he took in what I said, and he learned very, very fast, and he began reflecting on his own and finding great things. Like he was the first guy who did this thing on ramp where you stand pixel with the smoke and smoke when you see someone, and it's so annoying for the T's, because then you feel like, oh, we can't go ramp now, and now they know where we are and so on. So stuff like this, I think he's both he showed me that he's a smart player, but also very good aim.
Fair enough. Any thoughts, Hawka?
Yeah, I mean, Tesses looks really good in the games I've seen. I remember in that time period when he was with you on Optic, you could kind of tell watching the games he was very inexperienced at that point, from what I remember. Like, he was making a bunch of mistakes, but he seems to have cut those out pretty much completely from what I've seen. I just enjoy this Heroic team a lot in general, because I think they're doing a lot of newer things that some other teams aren't doing. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these things get copied by other teams. Like, they're one of the teams who I think are most active on CT side with the way they rotate and go for these different setups. They go for aggression with like 3 players on B, and then they'll have rotated 3 players back to A before you can even react. There's just so many cool things that Heroic are doing, especially on that CT side. I love the way they move all around the map, because it makes it not only really difficult to read, but I think it's also helpful when we're in this meta now where everyone's always talking about the economy management. And even if you do stack the wrong site, like you can just get away with saving at times. But in general, they seem to always just play for that information and have a lot of different setups, which I don't see from a lot of other teams. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is something we see more and more going forwards. I think on Mirage, I was really impressed with what they're doing. So yeah, I just think there's a lot to like about this Heroic team. And I also think something that is really nice for them is if they are going to play those kind of what feel like gambly setups at times where you are stacking so heavily on one side, they have a lot of those players that are really reliable. Like they have a Shush, for example, because you kind of need that if he's going to be solo holding the other side. So I just think there's a lot of stuff that Heroic are doing that I could see picking up in the meta as time goes on. And I think Hunden in general has been someone who's kind of led the way on a lot of those sorts of things. So I'm really interested to see if more teams pick up on just being like much more active, much more dynamic, and almost much more stack heavy on CT side, or if that's just a thing that Hunden can get away with as the coach more. Because I always felt like he had crazy good reads on what the T's are doing. I don't know how he does it, but I feel like he gets away with stacks way more than pretty much any other team. It's crazy.
I actually think as well, like even though obviously his career got a little bit derailed by the whole coaching bug thing, and we haven't seen him for a while because he had to do his suspension and all that. Like, first of all, as I've said on this show before, when he left that team, it was something like 1 month later, they just dropped off a cliff completely. So like, he obviously was having a big impact. And he's one of those people where, to me, it was the most obvious person who should just become a coach or a general manager in the game. Because not only is he a good coach, especially if you're going to have the younger players, this is what he's done his whole career, bring people up, show them how to play a role, play in the system. But even more so than that, he can also basically flex and be your GM because he's also found all that talent. Like, this guy's, the amount of talent he's found in the scene is unbelievable. He's very rarely put a foot wrong. I mean, even the ones I thought he did put a foot wrong, like the Borups of the world, even they made it at some point in heroic. So clearly, it's something about his eye for talent is like, there's very few players I've seen that have anything close to that.
Yeah, he's very good.
It's not just the eye either. It's like the patience to have to train a new player over and over and over and over again. Because I mean, getting someone up to speed is like a lot of fucking repetition. Like a lot of them getting it wrong 100 times, and you being like, why do I have to tell you 101st time? It's not an easy thing to do with one or two people, much less now you look at his career of having to do it so many times. So that might be the most impressive thing that he's done in his career.
Yeah, something else as well, by the way, because I know MSL obviously has lived in that world himself where you bring a player in, he's not that experienced, you get him in, you find his right role, you get him look good, then he gets signed by a better team, right? In that scenario, one thing as fans, we've got to stop doing it. And the worst example of this is people, believe it or not, who are Carrigan haters. Because what the Carrigan haters always say is like, well, why didn't he just win all the majors with the Astralis core? It's like, they're the same players, like these weren't alternate timelines, like they were younger. So, for example, like, what if he helped them do some of the things that then helped Glaive? Like, Glaive didn't get the same players Carrigan did. Like, Carrigan had them at one point in time. Someone had them before Fetish. Like, I'm sure every in my opinion, it's kind of like in fucking sports. They have a saying in, like, American sports, like, most great players at some point in history were touched by, like, great coaching, basically. Like, you have to at some point meet a great coach. Could be in high school, college, pro. Like, the point with a lot of these really great players is, you can't judge the guy at the end of the process. Like, you have to know who did what along the way. And as far as I can tell, Hunden, MSL's been in this position. Some of these people, you won't get your credit because maybe when you get the guy up to speed, he then shines when he's in the other guy's team. And it looks like maybe he did it all, etc., right?
I also think, just quickly on that's something else that's exciting about Heroic is I feel like Refresh for the longest time has been someone we've been waiting to break out. And this has got to be a great chance for him to do it. Like, if Hunden can have the impact on Refresh that he's had on other players, then all of a sudden they get another really good player on this team. And I don't think Refresh has necessarily had all those chances in the past. Because he came up on, what was it? Was it the Fragsters team?
It was on the same team with Bobsky, yeah.
Yeah. So he didn't really have the same sort of come up as a lot of other Danish players, right? I don't think he really went on a team with an established in-game leader to begin with. There might have been brief periods of time where he was, but either way, like if Hunden could get the most out of him, then this team becomes really exciting.
The one person called Refresh I want to be in the CSGO scene. Should have said entity there, really, because I was trying to make a reference to the org that owned Astralis or whatever. Should have said entity. What an editor, make me look good. That's your job. Well, you're fired. Get the fuck out otherwise. So listen. I even edit in like more. Put like a standard ovation there as well. Just put make it look really good. Make it look smooth, clean. Yeah. Cut out MSL looking like you didn't know what I was talking about. That's probably going to kill the whole vibe. Like, get this part where he's laughing now. Edit that part in. Doesn't matter. Make the audio go dead for a sec. Right, what about, let me think, what team should we swap to now? Hawka, do you have one? We'll give you the choice here. Do you have a team you'd like to talk about or a player at the moment that's interesting?
Ooh. See, for my topic, I was actually...
Don't make it ENCE again, obviously. Real team, please. Like we all watch Sarah.
I wasn't going to make it ENCE. I was going to go with something maybe more conceptual.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just talking about sort of the map pool in general.
Let's do it.
Okay, I think for the longest time... The discussion about the map pool or maps in general, a lot of people have framed it around how CT or T-sided a map is. And
whether it's balanced in quotes, yeah.
Yeah, and that just feels like such an outdated topic to me because that feels like something that came into the game when Nuke was a really CT-sided map back in the day. Because let's be real. Yeah. Nowadays, like most maps are fairly balanced, right? There's no map where you're expecting to get 11 CT rounds. I almost feel like a better way to look at the map pool is just with the style of maps. So I've recently been thinking about how Vertigo, for example, coming into the pool probably buffs teams like Furia, right? It's a map where you can take aggro fights, fast fights a lot of the time. Then a map like Overpass, you would style that as more of a passive map or a map where you have to be methodical and take the defaults in general. I want to know what your guys' thoughts on what the map pool in general should look like. Like, do you think we should have mostly what I would call standard Counter-Strike maps, like Infernos and those sorts of maps? Or do you like having maps that you feel like specifically work for certain teams? Because I think that's a really cool way of framing vetoes is, oh, well, Furia have picked Vertigo, and this is a map that suits their style, right? That's a really cool thing to have. And I almost would like maps, in a sense, to have that distinct thing about them where you can say, they've picked this map, and this is a map that works for them for this reason, right? I'm interested in your guys' thoughts on this.
The best part is we've picked the perfect time to ask MSL this question, because MSL used to be one of the most criminal offenders where his opinions on maps went like this. I think we should keep square brackets my team's best map.
Yep.
And I think the map that should be removed is square brackets my permaban. Like, he was actually one of the shameless motherfuckers who was doing that. Like when that old reworker nuke, when the reworker nuke came out and 3 teams in the world played it, he was still going like, I think it's a good map, because his team was one of them. Like, sorry, MSL, you haven't got a team right now. You might be able to give us an objective opinion here. Come on.
To be fair, Counter-Strike went his route. They just did it for Astralis.
True.
Yeah.
Everyone does forget that.
I think, but I actually think exactly what you're saying is right. But I think that the ban map I always have is the bad map. You know, it's just. I feel like Cass was a map where you didn't have many possibilities, and both tactically and like aggressive move as CT and so on. And yeah, that was my opinion back then. And right now I feel like Mirage.
Didn't you do a tweet recently that was about exactly this, saying like which map you thought should be removed? Am I wrong? Which map did you pick?
I said Mirage.
Mirage, okay.
For
similar reasons, I'm guessing. I mean, similar concepts, kind of a poggy map. Everyone knows how it's played, right?
Yeah, Mirage at least. Yeah.
So, okay, that implies, by the way, that you're not going with what the classic one is. So in the same way as back in the day I was referring to, we wanted Nuke removed because we didn't like it, thought it was boring, blah, blah. A lot of people obviously are going to say Vertigo now for the same reasons, right? You don't feel that way about Vertigo? Do you like Vertigo?
I just, from my point of view, I like Vertigo because there's so many different ways you can approach. Like, for example, when you get A control, and this is because I like the details, is that you can make so many different executes or different ways to take the A side. I feel like.
Go on.
And I mean, like, for example, in North we had I had 10 different ways to take A side just with different grenades, of course. And I just feel like the small gimmick stuff is fun, and it makes a way to. Let's say, for example, the move that Heroic did a lot, like you molo sandbags and run up ramp, you throw one flash and run up, you can make smoke deep connector. Like we had a tactic where we smoked deep connector, we did a flash, we did a molo headshot, and we all did it at the same time and ran up. And I just like the details in which were execute. Like obviously this was the simple executes, but I like the details in that way. So for me, Vertigo is fun.
I will say, by the way, I think part of the distinction people never bring up in the Vertigo discussion is that a lot of the teams who actually like the map, it's all based on playing it. Like, I actually think one thing a lot of people can agree upon is if you're just trying to watch the game for entertainment, that's the biggest problem Vertigo has, is that, you can't have can't just be 10 fucking A-ramp pushes, can't it, in a row. And then it just, if you're watching as a viewer, especially if you don't know the tactical side of what they're trying to do, it just looks like people getting lucky with spams because you don't know that maybe they scouted that guy and they didn't use it in the first round because they knew he was going to... So, to me, I understand as an observer and a viewer why people want it out of the pool, but I do know there's actually sometimes a sort of a quiet undercurrent of players who like the map actually now. I notice there's not many people complaining. Does Team Liquid actually like the map, Moses?
Yeah, we like it. We enjoy it. I mean, I think there's limitations on it still at the moment. But I think I would. My point was going to be exactly what you just said. I think it's super boring to watch. It's super boring to cast. It's super boring from an entertainment perspective. It's fun to play, And it's kind of, it has a lot of like cool action at different points. I think it's more fun depending on like the two teams that match up. Like if you face teams that like to play like a shit ton of retake on the A bomb site, that it's going to be that same story of like, oh look, here's those 2 smokes and Molotov and a bunch of flashbangs, and the bomb's going to get planted. We're going to spam for 20 seconds. We're going to retake, and we're going to throw our smokes out, and we're going to see what the fuck happens through the smokes. And I think that gets boring as a viewer. But as a player, I think it's a cool map that offers a lot of fun things. I think one thing that they could do still with Vertigo, I don't know, mid just feels weird to me. I feel like mid doesn't get nearly as much attention as teams should be giving it. I feel like it's still like a position that's like not super valuable. But I mean, I think once if that ever got fixed, I think it would be like a really cool map to play against. I think it's right now its like biggest value is like just a position for a lurker, but like you can't really send a lot of massive bodies there because you got players rotating from each side and you just kind of get trapped. So I think that's kind of my one big opposition to Vertigo at the moment.
To take it back to Hawka's angle, by the way, because obviously he had that very interesting sort of like a conceptual question about, the styles of the maps and what like who they might suit. And if we actually knew this, it'd be an interesting layer you could add as flavor text. I will say that's one area where, like, for some reason, because I'm considered a boomer for obvious reasons, people always like dismiss me with that whack angle of like, you just want it to be like the old game, or you just want everything to be like 1.6. But that's actually nonsense, because if people don't know, I used to flame the fuck out of 1.6 like this. I just want things to improve. So one area I will say, a lot of people probably misunderstand me, is one of the reasons I hate the nuke rework is just because to this day we all know the sound in CSGO has issues. Like there are certain times where you just don't fully... top pros, I think even Valde said this on Twitter, there's top pros who still have this problem. Like at certain moments you just get that thing in your brain where whatever does like the equilibrium tells you he's below you when really he's above you for half a second. And just half a second, even before you realise, can be enough to fuck up the game. So my problem with nuke has nothing to do with the verticality of the map and that design. Like similar for Vertigo, I even thought for Overpass that was like sort of like a less extreme version. But I thought that to go Hawker's point, I think that did add a lot to the game actually. Like to me, I've always said Overpass is actually my favourite CSGO map. It's just such a unique map compared to all the others. And quite frankly, I've almost never seen a team who actually was bad in any context where they were good on Overpass, put it that way. Like, there's not many other maps you can say that. Like, almost everyone who's good on Overpass, you've got to have some fundamentals of CS to be good on that map. So I like the idea, by the way, of having lots of different maps. Like, maybe you could have a map where it's all on the same plane, but it's super wide or something. Like, there's a lot of, like obviously this would open the game up to different styles, teams. It also mean, by the way, to go to the joke we made about Astralis, it would mean if you were the dominant team, you'd have to be amazing at all these different styles of map. I think that'd be cool its own way. The problem I have, though, is it's all well and good saying something like design a vertical map, but like it's really hard to get competitive maps that are good in general, Like I can see why people tend to stick with kind of like classic things, like a simple 2 sites and a middle area, and like they try not to make them too wacky, I've noticed. Yeah. You had a thought on that though, Moses? It sounded like you were going to comment on that.
I don't know if it's going to come in on that. I was going to come in on just like Hawka's like a initial
let's do it.
I think because you're talking about, I know like maps, like which map, like when you do a veto process, and I know this feeling because it's an idea I had as an analyst as well when I was still doing broadcasts, was like it'd be really cool to be able to like paint this veto in a process of like, as you like, Fury is the easiest example. Like they are highly aggressive and they do like to go up and challenge very early on in rounds, and then generally a faster paced team. So you can talk about like where on maps, like this is why they want to take it to Vertigo, because they can do this on a ramp and this lends itself to its strengths. I think the difference being now, I think the only thing that maybe this is just because I'm on the inside of a team now is when you play opponents and everything. I don't think teams necessarily like there's bad maps and good maps, but I think most teams generally know how to play.
Because they're not as extreme as like the old days online.
Like the weaknesses and the strengths aren't as apparent, I think, on like certain maps with different teams. Because there's just so many resources out there to be like, oh, Gambit's fucking good on Overpass. Let me go just watch this YouTube video, and in the next 2 hours I can copy every smoke, every flashbang they use, when they throw it, and you can literally just carbon copy teams, and in that way you're going to gain some semblance of being decent enough on a map to compete on it, and then it kind of comes down. So yeah, like strengths now of a team can make you better on a map, but I think everyone can be good, which is I think is generally why you see pretty much every single team with a permanent like ban of one map and then just get good on 6 maps.
You know, people probably actually undervalue in that sense. I also sound mad because they're actually being hired as coaches now, but people like Hawka probably actually don't understand the power they have in the scene. Because Hawka's thinking, there's only 200 people saw this, it didn't even get upvoted on Reddit. For all you know, like Moses says there, dude, I know people who do that. Like before the game, they go to YouTube and they type in this team on this. Like if you do one of those videos, someone might watch that who's a pro player or not and just get like a quick strat or something. Like that could actually have an impact on the game, mate.
NIP hired Mahone basically to do that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
right?
for
Like
sure.
he just made videos of this guy plays this spot in this way. And
Makes sense.
that's sick value for a team, yeah.
For sure.
So, I mean, I just think there's so many resources now where I think like map specific strengths for teams, like unless they have like some super unique play that might make them good on a map for like a group stage or an event, like that shit gets picked up after one game. Like, you know, if someone finds a way to like break overpass or find a new tactic on overpass that makes it really tough to deal with, like the next team that they're going to play against is going to find that. You know, pretty much all the top 10 teams now have a coach and an analyst, and I would say most teams have hardworking enough players to where somebody is going to notice it and someone's going to find it immediately when you review their last 4 games. So, you know, secrets don't stay secrets long. Even shit in practice gets picked up on like real quick.
It's not like back in the day when MSL here used to always make me look good on the analyst desk because I only had to pick between 2 maps for his map pick. It's like, which will it be today? Will it be Mirage or Cobblestone? Maybe I'll just look up which they second rotation ban. Oh, it's Cobblestone today. Good. Now I look like I know what I'm talking about. Thanks.
No problem. But I agree completely. Like, it's crazy how fast people are taking up everything, and it's the reason why it's so competitive is because people became so good at copying good tactical team, and now I feel like every team is running the same stuff just in a bit different way. Yeah.
I even think, by the way, you could probably throw that in as another factor that will be different on LAN. Even though it's true, the schedule often means you don't have like time to practice stuff online now. At the same time, sometimes you might have, like, remember, you're just at home, you might be able to get a few hours extra to look at demos stuff. On LAN, another thing that was so undervalued, in my opinion, was those stories aren't fake. The best coaches and IGLs would sometimes get like 2 hours sleep if they know the next day they have to play the game because they'd rather watch the demos and maybe get something extra or find an angle, especially if you're the underdog. Let's see if we can find some angle to beat them. Like, so I always thought, like, not every coach at IGL is going to do that. In fact, some might not even know to do that. They might just think, I haven't got any time, I've got to go to bed. So, like, that's another edge I think some teams would have on LAN.
Oh, I mean, also, like, the teams that might do that online would be teams like Virtus.pro and Gambit still, because they care a lot about being the best, right? I think it was Yakinda who was saying on, I think it was on Maui's podcast, he was saying that after every single game, they literally have like 3 of them watching the demos and looking for different things on different areas of the map, and they've really tried to refine their style of play, right? So Virtus.pro have probably been one of the teams that continue to try and do that, where, of course, I doubt top teams are doing it to the same extent.
Like James probably out there looking for new spots to hide on the A site on overpass instead of rotating. You know, listen, you got to, if you want to be as good as he is at Bane, you've got to fucking put time in, boys. That's the craft. That's excellence right there. You don't just become Cold Zero overnight. You got to fucking put in the hours. Okay. Shout out to James and Cold Zero, major finalists, by the way. I've never done anything except hit that god tier 1v3, which I still think is better than anything James ever done. Shout out to me.
You know what's funny is Shiro actually has lower deaths per round than James.
Oh, slightly. I could believe it. He's mega passive as well, for sure. Yeah.
He is.
The difference is, though, he does kill so many people, though.
Exactly.
Like, I have to give it to him.
And he wins the craziest clutches.
Yes. Exactly. Right? That's probably the difference. You don't see him like actively saving as much in like a 1v2. Yeah.
No, he's a good example, by the way, of the passive version of what I said about if Simple's like too aggressive, but then he always wins the round. Eventually, I just say, you know, a way of playing CS I don't understand. Shiro has the opposite to that. Here's the difference. When I criticise James for baiting, that's because he sometimes straight up does just like give up on the round or give up on a teammate and just save the AWP. When Shiro does it, he then wins the 1v3 he's put himself into. Like, if you can do that, mate, maybe you just know something about the game that I don't. Fair enough. You actually seem like you got it nailed online. I swear I said that really sinister. I should have just said online. Why did I say it so online? It's not like I'm going to come and punish him by making.
I can hear the fucking evil smile in your voice.
I know. Oh, by the way, since people don't know this, I'll just say this for comedic effect. Because obviously, right, you guys don't know this. I'm talking to the fans here. But when I do the shows at the moment, because I don't have like a producer or anything, they actually can't see my camera. So Moses doesn't know that. I'm not even joking. He's going to think I'm trolling. I actually am wearing literally a G2 jersey right now. It's one that the League of Legends team gave me, to be fair. Just to be a piece of shit to him, just because I do think he should have beat them, but whatever. I'm just doing that to fuck with him, so why not? That is the way I'm built. You have to understand.
Well, thanks for letting me know. We could have gone through this whole episode and would have never.
I thought it'd be funnier if I did. But at this point, it's too late to quit. So if you quit now, the show's still good. I've got enough time. We can cut that up,
Oh, that one hurt. That one hurt a lot.
Actually, let me think though, because here's the thing, right? MSL played Source. Obviously, we were from 1.6. Is there listen, don't say the map because everyone just says fucking Tuscan and that's got boring at this point. But is there a style of map or something from one of the old versions of CS that we should bring into CSGO? Because for example, let me think. One thing I miss, this will sound like a boomer take, it doesn't have to be on the version in CSGO, but one of the things I always thought in 1.6 made train super unique was that in 1.6 you can go under all the trains in a way that was
at the start of CSGO, remember?
Yeah, okay. And basically that was super significant, and also because you could wallbang a lot more in 1.6. If someone's just on the train, hiding behind the train, I don't just have to wait for him to peek. I just shoot him through the fucking train. In my opinion, some of those elements actually did make that map super interesting, because that was a very tactical map as a result. You had to know all the angles of where someone could be, or you had to gamble if you go on inner, for example. You can't check every angle there. There are certain things that I would like to see in CSGO.
Here's another thing. Do you think there are more maps that should have more wall bangs? Because one of the things I kind of like about Overpass, or at least I kind of liked before, was some of those wall bangs. And now it just feels like getting onto B short as a T, holy fuck. You just get fucked now, right? And even getting into connector, teams are so good now at lining up a nade and a spam into connector just to screw you. I don't know what you guys think about wall bangs in general, but some of those rounds on Overpass look so rough nowadays.
I think it depends on the extent to which you want to bring wall bangs back, because I was fully on board as a former 1.6er of being what the fuck? Why is there no spamming and wallbanging in this game? This is stupid.
What am I supposed to do for the first 30 seconds?
But now I think it would be kind of be silly to bring it back in. Maybe it's just because I'm kind of accustomed to what we have now. I think there's usually decent enough spots where you can spam with the AK in certain positions, like HUD on nuke isn't you have some possibilities there. The AWP can spam certain positions as well. But I don't know. I think if you start bringing it back to where there's the majority of places are spammable, I think you'd get a new game. You'd get eventually over time, when pros started getting their hands on where they can spam and how much more they can spam, I think it would just completely break the game to a certain extent. As in terms of maps, what maps from previous versions maybe to bring back, I always liked. I think I might have been one of the few people who like this map, and I think Duncan, you'll probably be the only person in this.
It's going to be fire in it. CPL fire.
CPL fire. I actually really liked.
It was an interesting map.
I think there's certain parts of it that I would just need to straight up delete off of the map because they were stupid and it made it huge. What
were you a fan about? I'm assuming the A site or something. The big one.
Yeah, I liked that underground passage, which is probably too big in this game to go to the staircase on the side of A, and then there was also that short position. I thought mid was actually a really cool design for a middle portion of a map. I think the fences now would be kind of cool, especially considering your resolution can't fuck with your visibility through it.
True. Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought that was cool. The mid portion of the map was just a lot of fun.
If people don't know, the real reason why that map was actually hated is because unfortunately, unlike Mill, which got made into Tuscan eventually and everyone had it, because that map was only at the CPL tournaments and only Americans played it. That's the real reason why everyone said it was shit. Likely. Really, the Europeans had just never played it because it wasn't in their tournaments. So you can't just go off history on that one. I agree. There was interesting elements to that map design.
I think it'd be cool to see what some actual professional map maker could do if they got their hands on it and edited a bunch of pieces of it down instead of whatever it was at the time. Probably some random 20-year-old just doing it in his free time and just slapping together random elements.
For sure, yeah. By the way, MSL, what do you think about the wallbang angle that Hawka had there? What do you think of that?
I think I don't like too much wallbang. I think it was kind of broken in 1.6 that you needed to. Yeah, it was so much about wallbang, and. I think it's pretty balanced right now, that some places you can wallbang, some not. Yeah.
Since Hawka gave the example of overpass, I'll tell you the angle I do like about overpass specifically for that Hawka, which is like when you have spams where it's like there's a wooden piece, so obviously I know I can shoot when it's intuitive, I like it, dude. Then you can sort of like people know. The ones I don't like, I'll give you an example. People might recently have seen this one. I know no one watches NA, but it's the one that Sheikh Zula guy did. Like when he's in CT spawn on Dust 2 and he shoots a motherfucking pixel in the roof of CT spawn and it shoots you where you're planting the bomb at it. I don't like that wallbang. That's just stupid. Like that one doesn't require scale like that. Like there's no counterplay to that. It's just if you go on that spot and he happens to get lucky, you just die from an AWP shot. Like that's the example of where I do think like wallbangs go too far. Like I like the logic that like, because the good thing about the wooden part I'm describing is, first of all, the map maker can intentionally make it part of his design. He's doing it on purpose. But also it signals to the person who might get wallbanged, like, I could be wallbanged here. It's like, there's not such a crazy information burden. Because the real problem with like the ridiculous wallbangs, I know Train had a few of these, is like, it's like you want it to be part of what pros are researching and practicing, but you don't want it to be like there's a million obscure ones, and if one fucker knows it that you just don't, you just lose half of a game and it's not your fault you couldn't scout him. Maybe he's never done that in an official game. Like that's where it feels too gimmicky to me. Like I don't mind the idea. I'm kind of between the two. I do think 1.6 went too far. Like Nuke was pretty ridiculous. I thought like the first minute, no joke, was just both teams just spamming and hoping they luckily headshot the other person. That is garbage. But the problem with CSGO is, at least earlier in the game, before we had any of the wallbangs figured out, sometimes it went too far the other way. Like the train example was a good one. Like, so I'm just invincible because I'm stood behind this train hitch now. So unless you can literally come and face me with an AK, you can't kill me. Like sometimes it went too far the other way.
I think the only problem I have with like some of the wallbangs in CSGO, and I misrepresent that. I don't even really have a problem with it. I guess it's just like a part of the spam that I think is a bit silly, is that like you can spam through certain areas if you're at the right angle, but if like you're off the angle, it's not going to work. So yeah, that's kind of always, I don't know, been a little bit confusing. If I was a player and I was like, oh, I'm not at the fucking perfect 47-degree angle, so he is there. Normally I would kill him, but this time I'm not.
That's the kind of shit you'd hire Anders for. He'd be like, yes, you need to stand in exactly this spot. He's calculated it all. God damn.
Yeah, but it's not a huge deal. It's just, I guess, a pet peeve more than anything.
Oh, by the way, since you've brought up the classic example, and it's the most roastable person in esports in Anders, because he's just a chill guy, so he doesn't mind. I will say, because Anders, by the way, if people don't know, we've said this many times, but it's true. One of the great things about Anders is he is in real life who he is on camera. That's what's great about him. Like, he's got the same personality, same sense of humour. And so, as a result, one of the ridiculous parts of him is he will unironically come up to you at an event and just be like, did you see my recent episode of Theorycraft? And like, that smoke actually was in it. And it's like, mate, I actually, in good faith, Anders, I've watched some of those episodes. And the problem is this. Every now and then, you'd have a sick fucking wallbang or a really good smoke. But I'd have to watch 9 fucking 4-man boosts that no one will ever do in a game in like the centre of Dust 2 or something. You had too many circus ones in there, mate. There was some that like, there's no, like, I just wonder how many pros, like, maybe someone linked them to the part with a good wall, but there's no way, like, fucking, like, the Hellraisers players were like, yeah, should we try the 4-man boost, the 3-man, and then no one was doing that, mate. And also, I will say, just as a random detail, because he was so proud of this, I also low-key hate the fact that Anders got super into Theorycraft. Because one time, he even started doing what I was saying about you, Hawk. He started playing God. Like, there was an event, I remember it vividly. It was DreamHack Tours 2015. MSL was there. He didn't get it. He didn't do fuck all, don't worry. It was when Diggins wasn't good. And at this event, right, my beloved Existence was there. He still had a bunch of good players. Should have made the playoffs. Didn't, because they played Hellraisers on the new rework of Train, which had just come out. Anders met them in the fucking airport arriving and just told them, if you play Train, check out this smoke or something. Like some OP shit like that no one else knew. And they won a game from it. It's like, Anders, why are you playing God with teams, mate? It's already, listen, leave that to fucking Niko, mate. You don't need to get involved.
I will say that sounds like a brilliant idea for a show match, is have Anders as a coach on a team with like 5 pro players and just force the pros to listen to everything Anders wants them to try to do.
That'd be amazing.
That would be next level. We need like another coach on another team though to make it work.
But to make it funny though, like, because obviously the conceit has to be that we know it's going to be funny, you know, it's just going to be serious. The players all have to be like really hard-headed players. Like it has to be like Niko, Cold Zera, like just all the players who, like, I just imagine Anders going, and now do the 4-man boost. They're just going to look at him like, what the fuck? What is he talking about? We're not doing it, man. Like,
dude, it's fine. Anders used to spend 8 hours on those videos to get like 1,000 views.
It's all right. And then
he must have used so much time.
Oh, mate. That's the funniest thing, MSL. The funniest thing of all is the reason why he put all those weird boosts and stuff is because he would spend so many hours finding them that, like, when he found it, like, he was just so happy. And it's like, yeah, but there's no application of that in the game. And it's like, in fact, you spent 15 hours on that. It's not actually a good thing, believe it or not.
I'm not gonna lie. When I started coaching Liquid at some point during like the first,
was he trying to recommend shit to you? Like, check this out.
I actually, in good faith, I was just like, oh, Anders had these Theorycraft videos. Let me see if like I just skimmed through.
Was there something? I bet you found something.
Found maybe 2 or 3 cool things that could have led to something, but like some of them are just like too difficult to pull off in like an actual game situation.
You'd have to be POW for something to be able to.
Like one is like a really it's an
old school reference, but it's a good one.
That's OP as fuck, but like it takes some crazy ass fucking run boost that you have to land on a single pixel to get to, and it's like
reasonable. Yeah, I'll probably just do that in the major. Yeah,
and I brought it in, and I had a couple of guys who were like, "Yeah, that'd be fucking sick. Let's practice this." And then after like 20 minutes, they're like, "This is dumb. This is fucking impossible. It's not worth it." So, yep, I agree.
But it's actually maybe some of those things that can change. Like when Furia found this boost on Vertigo, it's like these things that can make a huge difference in some games. And I think in the future we will see a lot more. Like, for example, in the finals, that people have found some crazy thing that they will pull off.
Well, so what's interesting
maybe
about
Anders should keep going and just sell the idea.
Yeah. The weird thing about that Furia boost is like no one else has used it. I haven't seen any other pro team bring out that boost.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's necessarily bad, but like it certainly just has like an application. Like, you know, even they have, I think, have only used it one other time. Didn't they use it recently and it got like caught up by VP, I think?
Right.
But like no one that boost didn't really catch fire. So I mean it's a pretty limited application.
What I like though is MSL's idea where even though he's saying it joking, like Anders should keep doing it and then sell the boosts and the smokes. Well, the joke would be if he was like some like dodgy like drug dealer, you see him, he's in the big raincoat, he comes over, hey kid, you want to buy some smokes? Well, obviously if you don't have much money, you'd have to buy all the shit ones from Theorycraft. Wouldn't like Ents would just be buying all the 4-man boosts, like, oh fuck. Meanwhile, like rich teams, you know, fucking FaZe Clan, they just, we've got all the best
one-way smokes.
Yeah, exactly. This is sick. And then they'd be paying extra premium. Don't give it to Astralis though, right? Yep, deal. That's a deal. Do that. So you have to understand though, don't ever tell Anders like it's a good business idea. He already like thinks he's going to take over the world with Skybox guys. And spoiler, that has been out for like 4 years. No, it's been out for like 2 years, I think. But you know, it's been out a while. That's all I'm saying.
It's actually nice. I use it quite. I use it.
Yeah. I think. Do you use it in your videos, Hawka?
Not in my videos. We use it on a podcast we do, and yeah, it's got a lot of good uses to it. I like it. It's just got a lot of things that you
it has the
do.
problem all the tools in CS do, especially the behind the scenes ones. The same with the stats programs. I always said this. I saw stats programs like 4 years ago that were 100 times more complicated than HLTV.org. But that was the problem. It's like you would go into it and you were like, well, fuck, what do I even pick as the filters? Like, there's every filter imaginable.
Yeah.
Like, and they were telling me stuff that in theory sounds great. Like, where you could look at like what player stands on this spot and how much damage he takes from this spot, and if there's a flash of it, it's like, mate, I that sounded like you were making me do maths on a fucking chalkboard as you were explaining it. Like, okay, I guess that sounds like a great tool, but it sounds really hard to use as well. You know,
there's a lot of stats that is hard to really used to something, I feel like. But I'm actually gonna try out Skybox now because I start streaming and will do some demo analyzing.
It'll be perfect for you. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's cool. You'll like it. Once you get the hang of it, it's another one of those programs. You just need like 10 minutes with it or something like that and flying around that.
Yeah. I remember I checked it out in the beginning, like in the way beginning. And I just remember that there were so many colors going on, so it was crazy in game, but I'm looking forward to see what it has now. I also remember something like that you could record a practice and then see what the opponent does or something crazy.
They patched that out.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're really saying is Anders was way ahead of the coaching game. He was like, I'm going to design tools and sell them to teams. Oh, there's a bug where you can see the other team. All right, Anders, the wrong team bought that one, did they, mate? Did you patch out the game, did you? Oh, was that Astralis who came for that one? Give me a break.
No, that was only
for always the nice guys, isn't it? You know,
it was only for like a week that was like possible, and it was just like something they missed in the coding, I'm assuming. Because
what was weird was it was that week when a Vanguard was at the majors. It was weird. I don't know what was going on. It wasn't really, of course. That's a joke, fans. It's just a joke. Just a joke. This video was kindly supported by Eddie, Lager15, Pronogo, Shenlong, Zachary Carter, Alexander Rao, Andreas Kroknes, Animosity, Dean Tanglis, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks to my dude, Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest? Would you like to ask a question in one of those monthly AMA videos I do? Do you want teasers on who the upcoming guests are? Or maybe you want to take part in a discussion about esports with moi? Well, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.